Hello, and thank you so much for watching So Sit Checks. I am Miss Izzy, and today we're going to be talking about thought form types. So, this is a really weird topic, I think, but it's really fun. And because I've been looking into it for a while, and it didn't get highly written about until recently, and there's actually a book out on the subject. The topic? It's very complex. So thought forms include things like Tulpas and Egregores and Servitors and golems. It includes even things such as the gods. There is a book on it called Egregores, the entities that hold the key to human destiny. I think that's the title. I do have the book, but it ran away. I don't know where it went. It didn't leave a note, and it didn't really leave a forwarding address. So I gotta find it. It's on one of my bookcases. I have 4, so yeah. It'll take me a minute to find it. This is just movies. But there are like 2 bookcases taller than me, and then 2 smaller ones. One is almost my height. But I will find it, and there will be a review on it. I will link it in the description once it is done, once I find it. But on thought forms. So I will also link all of my sources down below. But essentially, thought forms are living representations of ideas or beings. And they can tease your subconscious into seeing them as real. Maybe they take on a physical form. Maybe they're just an imaginary, being. An example being the least sentient as golems. A golem typically is in a clay vessel, and you create it by giving it its name. And to use it, you give it a single task. It will complete that task, and then if you do not release it, which is to say its name backwards, or to remove a letter that is equal to that of the uncreation. Also, you can destroy the vessel that it's in. But if you don't, it becomes very destructive after its one programmed task is gone. Now, this is a Jewish creature. I do have a book in greater detail on golems, but it is essentially something to be very careful of. I know someone who created a golem for themselves to go to work, and apparently they never did anything with it, and it just wanders around, and occasionally they see it. Golems can be very mischievous, and by destructive, it can mean that it gains something similar to its own sentience. Once it gets this level of sentience, it can cause problems, especially if you made it in your likeness. It can go into your life and be your doppelganger, essentially. Above golems are servitors, which are typically held by high magicians. They are created with a sigil. And these servitors are given one programming or more. They can be given a few, but you don't want to give it too many complex ideas. Once it has completed its programming, it will have some semblance of free will, but it doesn't have its own free will. You are still in control. The best thing to do when it has completed its programming, and to save yourself from a lot of heartache, is to take the sigil, cover it in black wax, stamped with binding sigils, and bury it. Or burn the sigil if it is on paper, or destroy it in some other way and bury the ashes or pieces once it is done. That is the best way to get rid of it. This creature is more of an astral robot. Essentially, it's your little friend. Think of it like a temporary familiar. You are contracting a spirit essence that you've crafted and cultivated yourself to do your bidding, and then to politely fuck off in the most loving way. After servitors, you have Tulpas, which I wrote a lot about, and the original curator of these ideas, because I took from 3 or 4 sources, plus my own knowledge and a book. The Tulpas are essentially similar to the servitors, but a little more complex. So you create a Tulpa, kind of like an imaginary friend, which is the same way that you would create any of these beings. You create a sigil or symbol that is that creature. You can do it in any way that you know for sigil creation, which can be to take the letters and rearrange them into the shape that you want, or take the basic characteristics that you have developed for this creature and make it into the shape of an individual. So say it has a bow and arrow, give it a bow-shaped piece. In the, this isn't the best example, but in the Veve for Papa Legba is a cane, but it can also be a sword, depending on him as the protector and him as an older gentleman. But that is like a simple example of visualizing the actual physical, what they have with them versus their representation on paper. Tulpas will be created in this way, where you visualize the character, and you can even do fan art for it, basically. Like, imagine this character. It is your imaginary friend. It is your, trying to remember his name. Bing Bong. It's your Bing Bong, the friend that likes to play. You feed it with your energy and your imagination. It is your intent that brings it alive, so make it real. Like, have a song like Bing Bong. Have drawings of it. Create his lore. Make its story real. Give it family. Give it a history. Give it a favorite type of candy. Give it dislikes. Make it a real creature, because it is. Now, you could cultivate it and let your imagination run riot. I am so sorry that I'm like speech impediment today. Well, let your imagination run wild with the creation of the tulpa. Like, you can even let it guide you into its creation. I've made 2 tulpas, one when I was itty bitty and one more recently. The biggest thing about tulpas is not to tell other people about it. Because once you make this creature, which is literally bound to you, it is bound, and if it experiences trauma or even death, it is bound to its creator, and therefore you will still experience something from what has happened to it. So it is something to watch out. It has a more sentience to it, and this word, tulpa, comes from Buddhist, because it's a Tibetan word, and it comes from Buddhist monks who felt that your mind power could manifest such energy that it can create this like astral body that you could even inhabit when astral traveling. It is a companion. It is a more sentient creature that is actually there. So you have to take care of it and cultivate it into realness. The reason you don't share it with everyone, if someone taints the image of your tulpa with their own image, and they put enough intent into the belief of it, it becomes an egregore, which is typically created by a group of people. And this is more of a Greek word, or it comes from Greek, but is essentially a tulpa that's been created by a group, or a tulpa that has been fed by multiple people, and now that shared will, that common will, which is the mandatory ingredient in the creation of the egregore, has now made a larger creature. And if one person taints the will and makes this loving, fluffy bunny into a vicious, like, rabbit with rabies, well, it's got rabies now, because one person put that nastiness into the will, because it is made off of this mind and intent. And if everyone spreads like wildfire this frightening intent, it then becomes real. A good example of an egregore is a like personalized deity of a coven or of an urban legend. Imagine how Freddy Krueger was fed by the fear of the school. That is an egregore. It grew. This thought form escalated, all because of the fear of the collective student body. And essentially, this egregore can do whatever it is programmed for. It can do anything you ask it, but it does have a level of artificial intelligence. And one thing that wasn't touched on a lot in the community is something that I've learned through personal interaction, that egregores, if they are not properly dismissed, not that there is a true way to dismiss them, once the original creator, the head of the creation, dies, that egregore can ascend into godhood if it does not dissipate. there's not a true way to dismiss an egregore. Of course, you can ask it to step down from protection of a coven, or you can ask it to leave you, but if other people who are involved still feed their ideas, their thought, their intent into this creature, it will still exist. The next type of thought form that was mentioned in one of the articles is how sympathy poppets are a presentation of actual people. You put essence or personal concerns, forgot my words. Put personal concerns into the poppet itself to attach it to that target. And you can even put the face of them to help direct the magic. This is essentially like a voodoo doll. And you can make it for yourself. You can make it for bane or for benefit. You can do any number of things with it. And I have talked about poppets before. So if you're interested, you can learn about, like, working with poppets. I'm not going to get into much with them here. Then, something that this person made sure to differentiate between is actual thought and unconscious thought. Actual thought is essentially manifesting. Like, I am going to make this much, or I have made this much money today. And then you have made that money today. It is essentially direct intent to make something happen. Errant thought is when you don't direct the intent and it just goes wherever. Typically, it will dissipate, but if you don't direct the intent, it can go anywhere. Essentially, this creates bad energy or negative energy or positive energy in a place. In places like apartment complexes, the energy can be so polluted from the collective, constantly feeling the same things, that it needs more of an exorcism to get rid of the energy. Whereas if you live in a singular home, you can just banish the negative energy and it'll go back to whatever your usual is. So essentially, this is manifesting, and errant thought is when you don't manifest with intent, and it can create positive or negative vibes that can affect the mood of the room. An unconscious thought, similar to an actual thought, is a manifestation of the idea. The unconscious thought is how, over time, we have created such deep correspondences with various objects. Things like color correspondences, pink being love, being a newer concept, whereas it used to be green. Things like the pentacle being water, earth, fire, air, and spirit, or void, depending on who you are. These correspondences we have to various things like sound and the chakras, those are all unconscious thoughts. We have given these things power, and by giving it power, it works. The last of the basic thoughts that you can have of the thought forms are meme thought, which is similar to the egregore in that it is a group activity. Essentially, meme thought is when something is an idea that latches on to a group of people and really just spreads like wildfire. Like a meme, a really good meme. Like how people really caught on to that the earth is flat thing and it stayed for so long. We still have flat earthers. Or how, like, you can mix pantheons when you see it. Like Aphrodite having an argument with, like, Isis, which is weird to me when you see archetypes. Anyway, like when you see memes like that, that is an example of meme thought, where you can think that this deity and this deity don't get along. They're not even in the same pantheon. They're not working together. I don't think they really care. But that's an example of meme thought. The last type of thought form to worry about is gods, goddesses, demons, angels. Those are still thought forms. All of them were man-made creations. Yes, there is an entity behind them that wears the face we give them like a costume. The way the best article that I saw put it was, Bruce Wayne is Batman, but Batman is not Bruce Wayne. Anyone can put on the mask, but that doesn't mean that anyone is the god. So we just kind of created all these entities, and the more power you put into them, the more power they have. And that's essentially what happened. Now, I wanted to talk about this just because it's a really interesting concept and it filled out a couple pages in my Book of Shadows. But it does open possibilities. And especially with my view of God, looking at this articles that I did and reading about all the different thought forms really inspired me. And it really validated some of my views of God and of spirits in general. Do you have a tulpa? Don't tell me about it. But if you have, did you have fun creating it? Do you still have them around, or have you asked them to be dismissed? Do you know anyone who works with an egregore? Or do you know any urban legends that you think are fed by the common will? Alrighty, thank you so much for watching Sentient Checks. Have a wicked evening, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!